I walked into that abandoned house, expecting rotting wood and disappointment. What I found instead was a meticulous secret, a hidden wall, a cold vault, and the kind of fortune that completely vaporizes your old life, turning every struggle you ever had into a bitter joke. My deadbeat father, the man who vanished 16 years ago and left my mother and me scraping by, didn't just leave me a derelict property. He left me an inheritance so vast and unbelievable that I had to decide if I would use it to quietly disappear, or to finally settle the score with the people who had abandoned us. Was I wrong for using his ill-gotten gains to expose the painful truths he tried to hide? Or was this the ultimate form of belated justice? Tell me, because I'm still grappling with the ghost of the man I thought I knew and the staggering wealth he bequeathed. My life before this seismic shift was defined by lack. My name is Ethan, and for the past 28 years, every day has been an exercise in making do. My father, Richard, left when I was 12. One Tuesday morning, he simply wasn't there. No note, no call, no trace. Just an empty side of the bed and a missing truck. My mother, Clara, tried to hold it together, but without a college degree and crippled by the sudden loss of income and the weight of betrayal, we spiraled. We moved from our modest home into a tiny, cramped apartment, and my mother worked 2 exhausting minimum-wage jobs just to keep the lights on. I grew up fast, starting work the day I turned 16, sacrificing college dreams to help with the bills. My childhood wasn't tragic, but it was relentless, built on the bitter resentment we both harbored for the man who ran away. We were convinced Richard was either dead in a ditch somewhere or living a pathetic, transient life, too ashamed to face us. That conviction hardened into stone over the years. Then, last autumn, I received a certified letter from a high-end law firm in a city 3 states away, a city Richard had never mentioned. The letter was terse, formal, and utterly baffling. It stated that due to the recent death of Richard Hayes, I was the sole heir to a property and a residual estate. My heart felt nothing, no grief, just a cold, hollow rage at the man who only acknowledged my existence when he was dead. The property was listed simply as 1,245 Willow Creek Lane, remote location, deed enclosed. The property was what we drove 2 days to see. Willow Creek Lane led us deep into a secluded, heavily wooded area, far from any main road. The house was a nightmare. Overgrown, clearly abandoned for years, windows boarded up, paint peeling off the clapboard siding. It looked exactly like the kind of place a fugitive would hide. It was tiny, 1-story, and deeply depressing. My mother, who came with me for moral support and to split the travel costs, burst into tears when she saw it. "This is it. This is what he leaves us, a liability," she choked out. The emotional weight of the place, the final, cruel joke from Richard, was almost too much to bear. We spent the first day and a half there cleaning and securing the place, trying to figure out if it was worth anything at all. The entire structure was small and sparse. There was only one weird feature, a small, strangely shaped closet off the main living room, barely big enough to stand in. It was packed tight with outdated coats and junk. On the second morning, while my mother was outside trying to clear some of the brush, I started clearing out the closet, hoping to turn it into a tiny pantry. As I yanked out a huge, heavy coat that smelled of mildew, I noticed something strange about the back wall. It didn't sound right when I tapped it solid, but too resonant. It wasn't the plaster wall I expected. It was smooth, cold wood. Curiosity overriding my exhaustion, I started carefully removing the cheap, worn wallpaper in that tiny space. Beneath it, I found a seam perfectly disguised. It wasn't a closet wall, it was a door. Hidden behind the coats, almost flush with the wall, was a custom-built, heavy oak panel, designed to look exactly like the surrounding construction. My hands were shaking as I ran them over the wood, searching for a mechanism. Finally, my fingers brushed against a barely visible indentation near the floor. It was a pressure plate, and next to it, a small, circular metal plate meant for a key. I remembered the heavy, tarnished silver key that had been taped to the inside of the legal documents. Heart pounding, I retrieved it from the car and slid it into the mechanism. There was a low, satisfying asterisk clunk asterisk, and the oak panel silently swung inward. I was standing on the threshold of a bunker. The air was cold and sterile, smelling faintly of concrete and dry documents. The room was not big, perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet, but it was astonishingly high-tech. There were banks of servers, all humming quietly, and in the center of the room, bolted to the concrete floor, was a giant, stainless steel vault door, the kind you see in bank movies. This wasn't the hideout of a failure. This was the fortress of a ghost. My mother joined me, and we stood in stunned silence before the vault. The initial inheritance letter had included a second, small manila envelope simply labeled Vault. Inside was a slip of paper with a 12-digit code and a typed note in Richard's familiar, precise handwriting. Asterisk welcome back, son. Use it wisely. Asterisk entering the code was the most surreal thing I've ever done. The heavy vault door groaned and slid open. Inside, it wasn't gold bars or piles of cash, it was more profound, and infinitely more valuable. The vault was lined with shelves holding dozens of pristine, indexed hard drives, leather-bound financial ledgers far more complex than any tax forms, and a stack of legal documents tied with ribbon. The ledger closest to the front was a summary. I opened it and read the first line, total assets under management, $4. 1 billion, and not million. Asterisk, billion, asterisk. My father, the missing accountant, was the architect of $1 billion secretive financial firm, likely operating outside of traditional regulations, a financial ghost who had left us with nothing, while sitting on enough wealth to buy our entire suburb. The initial shock quickly mutated into a burning, furious determination. I realized the secret wasn't just the money. The secret was asterisk, how asterisk he made it, and why he kept it hidden. So that's the situation I was in. I was the heir to $4. 1 billion from a father I hated, who built his fortune in secret while my mother cried over utility bills. I had access to unlimited power and resources, but the world, including my mother's spiteful sister, Aunt Carol, who had constantly looked down on us for being poor, still thought I was the broke kid selling this trash house. I knew this money was my only chance to finally make things right, but it also held the key to the secrets Richard kept. Before I tell you what I did next, how I leveraged that fortune to finally get the answers and serve justice to the people who deserved it, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have immediately sold the house and run? Would you have called the IRS? Or would you have dug deep into those hard drives to expose the truth? What would your next move be? I chose to dig. I wasn't just inheriting money. I was inheriting a story, a moral responsibility to the family he abandoned. I spent the next 3 months in that remote house, living like a hermit, while telling my mother I was fixing it up for sale. In reality, I was in the bunker, going through the financial records and hard drives. Richard hadn't been an accountant. He was a mathematical genius who had built a sophisticated, high-frequency, algorithmic trading system years before it became mainstream. He ran Etha Investments, a private, secretive fund managed entirely through digital networks and shell corporations. He had vanished not because he failed, but because he was too successful, fearing legal repercussions or criminal attention. A classic case of genius paranoia. He had built his own, perfectly safe fortress. The fortune was legitimate, though ethically dubious in its origins and secrecy. The bulk of the money was held in impenetrable trusts, all legally transferred to me on the day of his death. The best part, the initial inheritance letter that Aunt Carol had mocked, was completely legitimate. My revenge was twofold: revelation and retribution. My Aunt Carol was the primary target of my resentment. She had always made my mother feel like a failure, constantly lending us money with cruel, humiliating interest, and making snide remarks about our poor choices. The immediate, overwhelming action was financial. I instructed Richard's hidden team of lawyers and fund managers who, like magic, suddenly appeared, to execute two critical transactions. First, I completely paid off the mortgage on the cramped apartment my mother still lived in, plus 10 years of her salary, transferred anonymously to a high-yield account, listed as an unclaimed tax refund. She burst into tears, believing a miracle had happened. The second part was the public moment of retribution, aimed squarely at Aunt Carol. Carol and her husband had recently invested a huge amount of their retirement savings into a large, publicly traded company called Viridian Technologies *, constantly boasting about how rich they were about to become. I learned through Richard's old data that Viridian was fundamentally unstable, propped up by risky derivatives. Using Etha's vast resources and digital network, I initiated a series of perfectly legal, complex short-selling positions that triggered a massive institutional sell-off. I didn't crash the market, but I targeted Viridian specifically. The stock tanked, wiping out over 80% of Carol's retirement investment in one catastrophic day. It was clean, untraceable back to me, and utterly devastating to her financial standing. The revelation was delivered directly to my mother. After her financial relief had settled, I brought her back to Willow Creek Lane. I showed her the hidden door, the vault, and the massive ledger. The emotional confrontation was brutal. She cried, she raged, she felt the pain of his desertion all over again, but the shock was tempered by the reality of the money that had saved her. She saw the truth. Richard had loved us in his own twisted, paranoid way, and he had secured our future, even if he couldn't secure our past. The aftermath was silent but profound. Aunt Carol lost her smug superiority and has since been surprisingly quiet and financially humbled. My mother quit her jobs and is finally traveling the world, living the life Richard's money afforded her. I am now officially the head of Etha Investments, operating entirely in the shadows, navigating the labyrinth of global finance from a secure location far from the old suburb. The abandoned house now sits empty, a monument to a past I've abandoned. I walk through life now with the knowledge that I am one of the richest people in the world, yet I still buy groceries at the same mundane store. The fortune he left me didn't just buy freedom. It bought the ability to settle old scores and ensure my mother never struggled again. My father may have been a coward, but his legacy gave me the power to become a benefactor and a quiet force of retribution. If you think I was justified in using my father's secret billions to humble my greedy aunt and save my mother, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories where secrets reveal unimaginable consequences. And share your final thoughts on Richard's strange, protective secret and my use of his fortune in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.